welcome to the Little Theater of Virginia Beach's presentation of Threads, a play written by Abby Corman, starring Ann Heywood, and is being viewed on Friday evenings at 8 o'clock. The show consists of 6 episodes. Each Friday we will show one episode and then change it for the next week. This week's episode of Threads is called Hardware, and it's an older woman relating to a friend, an experience that kind of changed her life. So how did Hardware come to be?
Well, at the time that I wrote Hardware, I was a volunteer for an organization that had just started in this area called CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocate Program, which is still in existence and going strong, thank goodness. And we advocate for children who've been abused and neglected in the court system. And I'm not a volunteer anymore, but at the time I wrote this piece, I was. And I think that it was my creative response to hearing and witnessing the stories of children who had been abused and neglected and had those experiences. And it was just my way of maybe dealing with the whole horror of it.
So this episode is from the point of view of a woman who witnessed a child being abused at a point in time,
Yes.
and her reaction to it.
Yes. And also I think it speaks to the fact that when we're able to witness a struggle of someone else's, maybe it's a stranger, maybe it's someone we know, it gives us the strength maybe to deal with our own struggles. And that's I've got a new perspective on it since seeing it again.
Well, good evening, Liza. I thought that sounded like your knock. Huh? No, not a thing. Just sitting here watching the sun fall behind the mountains. I was just getting ready to make a cup of tea. How about having a cup? Good. Then come on in and sit down. What do you think of this beautiful weather? Just yesterday, I noticed the lupins blooming along the highway. And I sure was glad to see the last few patches of snow melting off the mountains. Seems like it lasted forever this year. No, everything's fine, perfectly fine. Well, thanks for asking, sweetheart, but there's not a thing wrong in this world. And yes, before you even ask, I do have a very good reason for not being at the bus stop this morning. Well, because I called Mrs. Banks and told her I was sick. Of course I'm not. I just finished telling you. I'm absolutely fine. Yes, Liza, you're right. I lied. But you know, I figure there isn't a bit of harm done. If one Monday in 18 years there's a speck of dust on Mrs. Banks' baby grand, or the fringes on her orientals aren't lined up just so. I'm telling you the truth. Nothing's wrong. Maybe a hot flash now and then. And that pain in my lower back is still there. But no real problems to speak of. Now, you just better stop acting like a nosy neighbor. I'm sorry, sweetheart. You know, I always appreciate your concern. I don't really think you're a nosy neighbor. So, why don't you just go right ahead and ask me why Cliff's pickup wasn't in the driveway all night? That's what you want to know, isn't it? Go on, ask me. Well, because I spit at him. That's why. I said I spit at him, plain and simple. We were just sitting out there in the driveway, in his truck, when I turned around and I went just like that, right in his face. Sure, Liza, I'll tell you the whole story if you want. Well, all right then. It all started yesterday morning when Cliff talked me into going to his Uncle Paul's birthday party. Aunt Blanche gives him a surprise party the first Sunday of every June. This was Uncle Paul's 75th. And we haven't missed a one since the year we got married. Oh, I guess that was Uncle Paul's 60th. Anyway, it's some silly superstition in the Wyatt family that if you miss Uncle Paul's party, something terrible is going to happen to you. Oh, well, like the time Cliff's cousin Pete's maples were all tapped out. Everyone said it was because Pete missed Uncle Paul's party that year. Well, you know me, I'm not the superstitious type. I just went to get out of the house. Oh, it was fine, I suppose. Uncle Paul tipped all the way back in his rocker when we all yelled surprise, the same way he does every year. Aunt Blanche made beans and yeast rolls, just like always. Cliff's sister Patty brought a new boyfriend, just like she does every time. And Cliff drank enough beer to sink a ship, same way he always does. And I drove back with the old lug, passed out in the back of the truck, just like I do every year. Only difference is, this year I didn't drive straight home. Well, because I decided to stop off at Benson's Hardware to pick up a washer so I could fix that leaky faucet. He's been talking about fixing it for a year or so now. But the drip was driving me batty. Yes, Liza, of course I know it's still dripping. Guess you want to know why I haven't fixed it yet, huh? Well, it's the strangest thing. I sort of like how it sounds now. Listen. Drip, 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 drip. It's got kind of a pleasant rhythm to it, don't you think? Why, Liza, I beg your pardon. When have you ever known me to take a drink? I told you I'm fine. Now, you want to hear the rest or not? Okay. So, I leave Cliff sleeping in the back of the truck in the Benson parking lot while I run in to pick up the washer. When I walk over to the counter to pay, I get right behind this woman with a little girl. Precious little thing. About 5 or 6. Coal black hair, long and straight down to the bottom of her back. Big dark eyes like moons, a little turned up nose, and lips the color of rose petals. She keeps turning halfway around, looking at me out of the corners of her eyes. And I smile at her each time, but she doesn't smile back. After a minute or two, her whole tiny body is turned facing me. She's swinging her arms back and forth and looking straight at me now. I keep smiling and I wave my fingers at her. And pretty soon, I see the corners of her lips curve up ever so slightly. Just then, the woman, I assume it's the little girl's mother, turns the little girl around by the shoulders real quick and says, "You stay right here, don't you touch a thing." And then the mother brushes by me to get out of line, so I turn my head just to see where she's going, when all of a sudden I hear something crash to the floor, and I turn around as quick as I can, and I see one of those hurricane lamps they have on sale near the checkout counter is in a million pieces around that little girl's feet. And everyone in the store is looking over to see what happened. And that little girl's just looking up at me with the fear of God in her eyes. So I bend down to make sure she's all right, just to check that none of the glass cut her. When all of a sudden, I hear that woman come up behind me and shout, "What in the world have you done now?" And then she pushes her way right between me and the little girl and starts smacking that child's face just as hard as she can. Oh, of course, the little girl starts crying. She's crying her heart out. And I'm just standing there watching her when something comes over me. And before I know it, I grab the woman's wrist so she'll stop doing what she's doing. And I say, "Miss, it was me who knocked that hurricane lamp over, not your little girl." She just stares at me with these real cold, beady eyes. And I stare right back at her. Oh, the little girl is crying so bad she can hardly catch her breath. "I know it, Liza. I can't believe I said it either. And I wasn't going to say another word. I swear I wasn't." But this little voice inside me says, "Lady, if indeed this little girl did knock that lamp over, it doesn't give you any right to do what you did." And the next thing I know, those words come tumbling off my tongue. "Liza, I told you, I know it's not like me." Well, it wasn't like me. Then the woman points her finger in my face and says, "You better mind your own effing business." And the poor little one is still trying to catch her breath, and she's looking up at me with those eyes flooded in tears. I take a tissue out of my purse and I get ready to hand it to her, when all of a sudden I feel this huge hand grab me by my arm. I know right away it's Cliff. He squeezes my arm tight, and I hear him say to the woman, "I'm sorry if my wife has caused you any trouble in this." And then he pulls me right out of the store, and I keep turning around to get one more look at the little girl. And that's when I just couldn't help it anymore. I burst out crying. So then, Cliff drags me even harder through the parking lot. And when we get to the truck, he tells me to give him back the keys and get in. So I do. And then I hurry to look out the window to see if I can spot the little girl anywhere. But I don't. Cliff squeals out of the parking lot, still half drunk and cursing at me for opening my mouth. After a while, I start to calm down some, and I clear my nose with that tissue I was still holding on to. And then I turn my whole body away from Cliff, and I lean up against the door. My legs up underneath me, my arms tucked inside my sweater, and my forehead pressed against the cold glass. And I just stare off outside. And that's when I noticed the lupins climbing up the sides of the mountains, and the last bit of snow melting off the tops. And little by little, Cliff's voice starts melting away too, until all I can hear is the sound of my own breath, coming in and going out, coming in and going out, slowing down with each one. And in a while, I start to feel like I'm breathing way deep into my bones, one long breath after another. And before I know it, Cliff has made the last turn home. So I straighten myself up in my seat, but I keep my face turned toward the window until he pulls up in the driveway and comes to a stop. And that's when I turned around and I spit at him. Just like that. In his face. So, there you have it, Liza. That's what you wanted to know, wasn't it? No, I'm fine. Really, I am. I just think I might rest here for the rest of the night. Oh, I'm too tired to move. Would you mind turning off that lamp on your way out? Thanks, sweetheart. I'll see you at the stop in the morning.